and the service opportunity comes and you say, no, I'm busy chanting. So obviously you don't understand what you're doing. So I unfortunately have noticed many times devotees miss the point of Krishna consciousness just like that.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Free Radical podcast. Today, I've been blessed with the opportunity to meet and share with a very unique Vaishnava sadhu, Srila Bhavan Vishnu Maharaj. In 1970, Bhavan Vishnu Maharaj earned a master's degree in physics, and by 1975, he left behind a promising career in science after meeting his spiritual teacher, Srila Prabhupada, in Los Angeles. Deeply inspired, he chose a path of devotion and fully committed himself to a spiritual life. After joining the Los Angeles temple, he immersed himself in studying key spiritual texts like the Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam. He soon received initiation from Srila Prabhupada and was given the name Bhavananda Rai Das Brahmachari. A short time later, he was awarded second initiation and began living as a dedicated monk. Wishing to serve his teacher wholeheartedly, Vishnu Maharaj became actively involved in public outreach and quickly became a respected teacher. A few years after his teacher's passing in 1977, Vishnu Maharaj met Srila Bhakti Gauram Narasingha Maharaj, and together they came eventually under the guidance of Srila Bhakti Rakshaksidhar Goswami Maharaj. Eventually, they established different ashrams, one among them being Govindaji Gardens, a devotional sanctuary and temple community in South India, where Vishnu Maharaj currently resides. It has been a very nice, rich conversation filled with historical details and the life journey of a person who has had a lifetime of devotion. So we are all more than welcome to join and get to discover the heart of this unique Vaishnava. This is the Free Radical podcast. To support it, please subscribe to our channel by clicking on the bell. And if you feel nourished by the conversation, also like it, share it, drop your thoughts, share your comments so we can keep this conversation for what it is, an ongoing feast of sharing our hearts. So without further ado, dear brothers and sisters, here is Bhakti Bhavan Vishnu Maharaj. So welcome you all to the Free Radical podcast. And today I'm very honored to have here Srila Bhakti Bhavan Vishnu Maharaj. Thank you so much, Maharajji, for coming and joining us in our podcast. And I had the chance of meeting first Srila Narasingha Maharaj a decade ago or so, and I recall having known both of you and the mission as well for decades, especially through your writings and articles. But last year I had the chance of meeting Maharaj when I traveled South India, had the opportunity of visiting Sri Govindaji Gardens for a few days. It was a beautiful experience. So very honored and happy to have you here, Maharaj. So you had a wonderful, intense life journey from astrophysicist to Vaishnava monk and so many things in between. So I don't know where to start. You have recently shared with me that you are working on an autobiography. So where you share your life journey, maybe we should go there for a moment.
Well, if you will allow me, I will start at the beginning, just briefly, to summarize like the prelude to coming into Krishna consciousness. I had a lot of college education, 9 years total, actually. 4 years undergraduate, and I got an MS in. Then I went on to graduate school and got an MS in physics, and I was going to get a PhD, but I left before I finished. I lost interest at that point because I wasn't finding the answers that I wanted. Science is a search for truth. Krishna consciousness is a search for the supreme, absolute truth. So we go quite a ways beyond the empirical evidence, and rationally speaking, we can't prove our faith through empirical evidence. It's not possible because empirical evidence is of this world. And as we know from our scriptures, Brahmada Karnapat, what is it? Brahma Pramada Karnapatava Vipalipsa. And that's a Sanskrit for all living entities. We make mistakes, we're subject to illusion, we have a cheating propensity, and we have imperfect senses. So I once met a magician. Actually, he was an Indian gentleman. He was a world famous magician. And I quoted that sloka to him. And I said, all your magic is based on this sloka. And he looked at me astonished and said, wow, you're right. You know, because the magician goes like this and produces something. And meanwhile, he's doing something in the other hand, which you don't even know. And so you're distracted. So you have imperfect senses and you make a mistake and he's cheating you, and all these things come in there, and we're very much in illusion about that's what a magician is, a master illusionist. It's like Maya means literally that
Actually,
which is not.
the two words are connected. Maya and magic. There is some etymological connection there. Yeah.
I don't know about that. It's perhaps true. I never really looked that up,
Yeah. Yeah.
but they are. Let's see. Well, Maya is illusion. I mean, it's real, but it's temporary. And the magic is also temporary, but it's an illusion. It's not what it appears to be. And when I studied physics, I was amazed to figure out in physics there are what do they call them? There are contradictory evidence, which appears two simultaneous truths that are opposite cannot coexist because they contradict each other. But yet we find in Vaishnavism achincha beta beta tattva simultaneously one and different. Like Krishna, he can be in one place and he can be in another place at the same time, or he can expand himself into infinite expansions of himself. I'm speaking philosophy now. I was going to speak more about history, so perhaps I should continue there. So I met the devotees in a college campus in San Diego, and they had invited me to come and stay with them. So I went there, and then they went up to Los Angeles, and I went with them and came to the temple, and I met one of the devotees there with the Bhakti program, and he invited me to stay, and I stayed, and I've been in Krishna consciousness ever since, to the degree which I'm in. And I never looked back, really. Even uh, later, I was fortunate to distribute Srila Prabhupada's books, and I traveled a lot in the United States. I was usually taking out parties because I was a little older than the others and had experience in traveling and camping and making arrangements and like that. I used to be a Boy Scout. We always went camping and so many trips and so on. So I asked to go to Chicago, where there were more senior devotees than where I was at the time. And there I went to the airport with the senior book distributors for some time. And then Narsingha Maharaj came to Chicago, and he was set up in the service there by Tripurari Maharaj. He was in life membership, and he needed some men in his party, and I got to join with Narsingha Maharaj. I had met him a year earlier actually in Mumbai. It was the annual festival where we would go to India. Prabhupada arranged this for all of his disciples, and once a year at Kartik time, we would all come to India, not all of us, but many of us. And being a Sankirtan devotee, I was more frequently allowed to go. Anyway, so we would go to Mumbai and Delhi, Vrindavan, and sometimes Jagannath Puri and Mayapur. Obviously, every trip we do all of those. But this year, actually, I think I did most of those. I was coming from Mumbai, and I met Narasimha Maharaj briefly in the Brahmachari ashram. And then when I took a train, I think it was the Rajdhani, to Delhi and then down to Vrindavan, he was in the same bogie as I was, and he spoke the whole time. And I was so impressed because here was a Vaishnava who was highly learned, highly traveled, deeply realized, and described these amazing adventures that at the time when I first heard them, I thought, well, this is impossible. How could anyone do all these things? They're just beyond imagination, all the things that Maharaj had done, like his preaching in Africa, looking down the barrels of rifles, and being in Ethiopia when Haile Selassie was assassinated and bombs going off and barely made it out of the country, and so many things, being stuck in a village and being chased by the natives. It was just astounding. So I was pretty impressed. And then I met him again in Jagannath Puri, where he came to my aid. I was giving a Pandal program there. They asked me to speak at a Pandal program, and there were Marxists interrupting it, and he came and helped me deal with that. We basically had to just shut it down. Then a year later, when he came to Chicago, and he asked for a brahmachari assistant, and Tripurari Maharaj chose me. And so I got to be with Maharaj, and I stayed with him for 37 years. Um, and we had a traveling party. We traveled all over the United States and established small ashrams in California, Hawaii, so many places, Vermont, Italy twice, um, northern India and Vrindavan, and then here in Govinji Gardens near Mysore, and a number of other places. I'm leaving out some. I can't remember them all so
Mhm.
quickly. But we had established so many different ashrams and traveled so many places. And usually I was collecting and supporting our party. And gradually more devotees joined with us. Then, when we established this ashram here in Govinji Gardens, where you visited us,
Yes.
um, then at that time, Maharaj was taking disciples. And
Hmm.
well, in Vrindavan, he had started a little bit, but here more so. And so the mission expanded a bit, and we established other ashrams. We kept the one in Vrindavan for quite some time, and opened other ones, and did many other preaching missions, and published many books and articles and magazines. And both Maharaj and myself and other some of his disciples were very, what is the prolific, I guess is the word for it, publishing many,
Hmm.
many things. So
Yeah.
I was actively taking part in all of that, establishing GoSci.com website. You can go online, you see all of our publications, or most of are listed there, or our devavision.org website where you can purchase the books. And in Vrindavan, you can also purchase the books. They're available all over, but these are just Krishna conscious books. So this is really the legacy of Srila Prabhupada, because back when I joined his mission, he was saying, if you want to serve me, distribute my books.
Hmm.
And he also said, write articles, publish books, and increase. This is Mahaprabhu's order, coming right
Mm.
directly from Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Yari Deki
Mhm.
Tarikaha Krishna Upadesh. The
Mhm.
Upadesh means the teachings of Krishna, like Bhagavad Gita. Everywhere you go, give this message. So that's what we were doing and still doing. Now I'm
Mhm.
getting a little older. I don't move around as much. But for those 37 years with Maharaj, I was never sitting still. We were always traveling, always looking for new and novel ways to preach, he developed the Museum of Vedic Culture, which is basically taking artifacts and antiques from India, which reveal different aspects of Krishna consciousness, Rajasthani paintings, Pichwai paintings, bronze
Mhm.
statues, murtis of Krishna and different avatars and different demigods, and classical Indian music, and the swords of Rajasthan, the Rajasthani
Mm.
swords. We had tiger daggers and hatchets, and
Mm.
those were extremely popular. I'll just give you one example. We had an exhibit set up in New York City on Wall Street. That's where all the stockbrokers are. They are stuffy.
Mhm.
They all wear suits and ties, and their nose is up in the air, and they won't even look at the devotees. But we had this red velvet with a gold wooden frame around it, and on the velvet were these different weapons attached. We had a hatchet
Mhm.
and one a dagger, which was a Damascus steel, and it was like shaped like that, very sharp, and ivory handle. That was when it was
Mhm.
legal. There were ivory handles, many of them. That was common. And on Wall Street, all these people are walking by with their nose in the air, and they just happen to glance over, and then they just walked right over to us. When they saw the weapon,
Mm.
immediately attracted them. And in Hawaii, we set up a table in malls and also in high schools and giving away Prabhupada's books, the small books, like Beyond Birth and Death. I don't remember all of the best one
Mhm.
was Higher Taste. That's a little cookbook but
Mhm.
the first half of the book is all philosophy, the introduction.
Yeah.
The rest has a few recipes, but people like it because they're simple recipes: how to make halava and sandesh, and how to cook a sabji, and a few simple things. And so we were giving these books out over the artifacts from India. So it was a novel way. Maharaj was always
Mm.
trying to come up with different ways of spreading Krishna consciousness. So it's quite an experience. So at one point, I had the great fortune of going with Maharaj to meet Srila Sridhar Maharaj. That was in 1987. In
Mm.
'86, when we were in Hawaii, in Yacht Harbor Towers, overlooking Yacht Harbor, where Srila Prabhupada used to go on his morning walks when he was staying at the ISKCON Quail Way temple there. He would go for walks on Magic Island, and we were overlooking that, and so we had an ashram there for a couple of years. And preaching there, Mr. Wadamil, the richest man in Hawaii, happened to come to some of our programs, and it was nice. Then in '86, Gorpurnima, Maharaj gave me sannyas, even though he wasn't an ISKCON guru. We were still an ISKCON, and they objected that he's not a authorized guru. But we
Mm.
went ahead anyway because he's actually is qualified, so we weren't worried about it. And it's kind of funny. I find it quite humorous that um, we I was going to the temple, the ISKCON temple, because we had our own place, but we were affiliated a little bit with ISKCON. So I was going to the temple and giving Sunday programs and different classes, different times. So when the GBC meetings came, where they were discussing my taking sannyas, because the previous year I had been recommended, Maharaj arranged that I get a recommendation for sannyas, and they said, yes, Bhavananda Roy Das was my brahmachari name given by Prabhupada. Bhavananda Roy Das may take sannyas in 1 year. So in '86, they had heard that he was going to give me sannyas, so they were objecting
Mm.
to that. So during the meetings, they passed a GBC resolution that Bhavananda Roy Das may take sannyas from a bona fide ISKCON guru.
Mm-hmm.
So we discussed that. We thought, well, let's go ahead anyway, even though he's not totally authorized. So he gave me sannyas, and then all the leaders were coming back from the GBC meetings where they had passed a resolution about me. So I
Mm-hmm.
went, and the resolution was that I can take sannyas from a bona fide acharya. And that was
Mm-hmm.
again, that was reiterated at that time. And then I went to the airport and picked up Tamal Krishna Maharaj, who was one of the senior most devotees in ISKCON at that time, one of the GBC leaders. So I
Mm-hmm.
picked up Tamal Krishna Maharaj and I went with my dunda, and I gave him a ride to the temple, and we went in Prabhupada's room, and he never said anything about my taking sannyas because he knew Narsingha Maharaj very well. They were godbrothers and
Mm-hmm.
fellow sannyasis of Srila Prabhupada. Then a little while later, Mukunda Maharaj came, and he was the GBC for Hawaii. And I went and picked him up also at the airport and brought him to the temple. And then we went into Prabhupada's room, and he said, so you took sannyas from Jagadguru Swami. And I said, yes. And he said, he's not really authorized as a guru. And he told me, instructed me, you need to get your sannyas blessed by a qualified ISKCON leader, guru,
Mm-hmm.
BBC. And I just looked at Maharaj and I said, okay, Maharaj, please bless me. And he just, ah, and that was the only reaction to my taking sannyas. No one ever said anything after that. And when I went to San Diego, I go there and give class in the temple, and LA also. And at that point, we were kind of on the verge of maybe leaving ISKCON. We tried to hold on for the longest time because, it's Prabhupada's mission, it's his lifeblood. And we wanted to serve him, but it was just becoming impossible because of the actions of all the leaders. So when we were in this Yad Harbor Towers, Narsingha Maharaj was asked by the GBC to help out Berkeley because one of the leaders who had been in charge there, one of the gurus, had done some crazy things, and the temple was a shambles. So they asked Narsingha Maharaj, knowing he was a strong leader, to go there and straighten it out. So we went there, and that was just after Gurpurnima in '86. So we were there for some months, and I went out traveling and collecting again, and he was managing the temple, and there were many, many problems. I won't go into all the details, but he had to physically defend the temple and call the police because the former guru there was trying to take it back over, thinking it was his property, but actually it was an ISKCON temple. Anyway,
Mm-hmm.
so at that point, there were death threats, and Maharaj just said, "This is crazy." It was a court case, and he thought he resigned and went and joined with Tripurari Maharaj, who now had left the Chicago. He was the zonal leader over the temple president. Kalki Das was the temple president, and he went and opened his own small place in San Francisco, South San Francisco, and he had gone to Srila Sridhar Maharaj.
Mm-hmm.
Now he had when I went to Chicago first, I had the tapes of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, which I was listening to and becoming very enlivened. And I had gone to associated with Sudhir Goswami in LA. He was the temple president, actually, and he'd been sent by the GBC to ask questions of Srila Sridhar Maharaj on behalf of the GBC. So in the process, he became totally captured by Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And so as the temple president in LA, he was engaging devotees to transcribe the transcripts. And he was planning to publish them, which eventually came in the form of all of Srila Sridhar Maharaj's books. So at the
Mm-hmm.
time, he was the LA temple president, and I was the book distributor there. So I used to go in his little tiny room, which was full of books, and we would have discussions. On my day off, I'd spend the whole day there, and we'd speak for hours. and all philosophical questions and Krishna consciousness. And he was saying, well, Srila Sridhar Maharaj says this and Prabhupada says that. And he'd pull out books and transcripts and everything. And it was wonderful. So we would talk for hours, and he gave me some tapes and transcripts. So when I went to Chicago, I had him with me. And Tripurari Maharaj had to call me in the office because he was in charge, and it was his responsibility to see if there was any contraband, because the books of Srila Sridhar Maharaj were in ISKCON were contraband. So, so he called me in his office one day, and he goes, "So, Bhavan Das, I hear you got some tapes and transcripts of Srila Sridhar Maharaj." I said, "Yes, Maharaj, I do. They're very enlivening. I get very inspired by listening to them. I'm not causing any trouble. I'm not distributing them or preaching about them to the other devotees, not distracting them. I'm just, using them myself." And he said, He didn't say anything. He was supposed to take them away from me and chastise me. Later, he told me, "I just didn't have the heart to take them from you." That's what he told me later. As I said, he left the ISKCON environment, and that happened by the mercy of one of our other godbrothers, book distributor, Markandeya Das. He gave him Tripurari Maharaj as a Sri Guru in his grace, and he said, "There's something wrong with this book. Will you please read it? Tell me what's wrong with it." Srila Tripurari Maharaj said when he read that book, it made him cry, because he said, "This is what ISKCON needs. This knowledge. This is what we are missing in this society." So he had been helping renovate some of the temples in San Francisco and in Seattle. In San Francisco, particularly, it was the Carl Street Temple, and in Seattle, it was the Hari Vilas, his temple there. And he'd spent considerable time, and then he started preaching about Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And they didn't allow that and told him to stop, but he didn't stop. So they told him he had to leave the society. So he did, and then he rented a place in South San Francisco. And when Narasimha Maharaj had so many problems with at the Berkeley Temple, he decided to go visit his godbrother, because Tripurari Maharaj had invited him to come to Chicago if he ever left India, and he did go there. This was a couple of years before that. So he went there, and I was out collecting. I called up Maharaj. I called him every night to tell him how I was doing and so many things, just to check in. So I called him up, and he said, "So I left the post of president at Berkeley, and I went and joined with Tripurari Maharaj." And I said, "Really? You joined Tripurari Maharaj?" Then I said, "I'm a Prabhupada man." I said this to Narasimha Maharaj on the phone. And at the time, he was Jagat Guru Swami still. And then he said to me, "Well, you'd like it here then. They're all Prabhupada men." Because they were all my godbrothers. There were three godbrothers there. And they'd all had association with Srila Sridhar Maharaj. Two of them had taken sannyas from Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And Narasimha Maharaj had taken sannyas from Prabhupada, but he had heard from Srila Sridhar Maharaj. Then he kind of became convinced by their association that he wanted also the shiksha of Srila Sridhar Maharaj. Now, some of our godbrothers object, thinking how you can be unchaste to Prabhupada. But you could ask anyone, well, can you love your mother and your father at the same time? Of course you can. So if you're have a loving relationship with your mother, it doesn't take away from your love for your father. They're both there. So we can have multiple gurus. We can share that affection we have, that relationship. There's shiksha and diksha. Diksha is the predominant one, but it really comes down to the shiksha of the diksha guru is the most important thing. The shiksha over the diksha. So that would mean that perhaps even a Shiksha guru is more important than your Diksha guru, and sometimes that's true. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj was asked a question about that. Well, who's our most important guru? And he answered, whomever helps you the most in your Krishna consciousness, that is the most important guru, whether it's Shiksha or Diksha. And he answered also when he was asked, well, what if my guru's only Madhyam and he can't take me all the way to Krishna? I'm going to be shortchanged. I can't make it all the way. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj said, if you are sincere, Krishna will send another Vaishnava to help you with the rest of your journey. So it really comes down to what's in you. What is your faith? What is your dedication? How sincere are you? If you are sincere, Krishna will reciprocate. Like I learned from many years of going out on Sankirtan and praying to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu for his mercy, that if I was sincere, his mercy would always come. If I was earnest, sincere, dedicated, and I prayed not on behalf of an ego that I collect most money or something like that, just to be successful in my endeavor, and praying in the sense of being in the negative to being helpless without the mercy of Mahaprabhu, then he always reciprocated. This is the mood of Srimati Radharani. She's seen as the negative to Krishna's positive. And he is controlled by that because her need is so great. He cannot exist without the love of Radharani. It's a dynamic interchange of energy, and that is Mahaprabhu. He is the combination of Radha and Krishna, and the dynamic between them, the rasa of their love, that is Mahaprabhu's bhava. His internal thoughts are that. And amazingly enough, Srila Sridhar Maharaj gave us one book called the Golden Volcano of Divine Love, describing the essence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, that he is a volcano, and the lava coming out of the volcano is his audarya, the distribution of Krishna consciousness. It is the Sankirtan movement. That is audarya. So in this way, Mahaprabhu is greater than the combination of Radha and Krishna, because the Madhurya, beyond the Madhurya, is the Audarya, the distribution of the Madhurya. This divine love is distributed. That's the Sankirtan movement of Mahaprabhu. And it's just glorious. And you can take it in a little similar way, that when Mahaprabhu was in Jagannath Puri dancing in front of Lord Jagannath in the Rath Yatra, his mood is Radha bringing Krishna back to Vrindavan. It is the mood that the gopis exhibited in Kurukshetra when Krishna went there after many, many years' absence from Vrindavan. He was in Dwarka and he went to Kurukshetra to meet the residents of Vrindavan, and the gopis came and met Krishna, and they felt a lacking because Krishna has come in with all his Aishvarya, elephants and ornaments and so many people and the many wives. And Radharani, in one of a really wonderful prayer, is saying, we are simple village girls. We do not know all these things. We don't know all your glories. We just want to love you. And we want you to come back to Vrindavan, because we want you in your simple form, running barefoot on the banks of the Jamuna with a flute tucked in your belt and a peacock feather in your hair and your bare feet and a ladu melting in your hand. We want that Krishna. the simple, basic love, that is Vraja Bhav. And they are missing that. So their necessity is so great that that is all attractive to Krishna. And in the Rath Yatra, this is the mood of Krishna, of Mahaprabhu dancing in front of Jagannath. He is
Mm-hmm.
the mood of Radharani, bringing Lord Jagannath, Krishna, back to Vrindavan, just as Radharani is in Kurukshetra. And the necessity is the main point here. And
Mm-hmm.
Bhaktivinoda Thakur said, I want to spend my last days in Kurukshetra
Yeah.
because the need for service in Kurukshetra is much higher.
Mm-hmm.
These, as expressed by Radharani, she wants to bring Krishna back to Vrindavan so they can have a higher and more pure and simpler expression of their love. It is such a wonderful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And when Rupa Goswami realizes this, and he writes a poem on a palm leaf and sticks it in the roof of the hut, and then when when Mahaprabhu comes and takes that, this is all in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and he reads it, he's astonished. How has Rupa understood this?
Mm-hmm.
Well, then of course the other devotees say, well, uh, I forget what do they call Mahaprabhu at that point. Anyway, they say, Prabhu, you have given him your mercy, so
Mm-hmm.
naturally he can understand your internal nature. But the poem is a parallel verse with the same meaning that the one that Radharani spoke. And it's saying, I'm your same old friend, Radharani, and I long for you to come back to Vrindavan on the bank of the bank of the Jamuna, and so we can run about and have our pastimes in Vrindavan, these loving pastimes. I long for those days you'll come back. So Bhaktivinoda Thakur recognizes the necessity of service. So any devotional service can be evaluated in one way by its necessity, how necessary it is. If you are asked, if you're staying in a temple, there always used to be a temple commander who arranged all the services. So he was in the position of when someone was sick or couldn't show up or didn't show up, he had to arrange somebody else to do the service. Like, where's the cook? Who's doing the offering? Who's cleaning the
Mm-hmm.
pot? So on and so on. So there's a necessity. And if the temple commander asks you, I need you to clean the pots, and you go, pots? I'm not going to clean the pots. I'm a pujari. I only do the deity service. Then you're not realizing the real
Mm-hmm.
nature or essence of devotion. And Narsingha Maharaj used to give a good example of this, how when we chant japa, that is described by Prabhupada, we're actually making a prayer to the Lord. Oh Lord, oh energy of the Lord, please engage me in your service. So we're chanting like this, and perhaps we're sitting in the temple room chanting, oh Krishna, please engage me in your service. Oh Krishna, oh energy of Krishna, please engage me in your service. And the temple commander comes in and says, Prabhu, I need you to help wash the dishes. You go, hey, I can't come. I'm busy chanting japa. So it
Mm-hmm.
means you don't understand what your japa is because you're asked to do service. You're already asking for service, and the service opportunity comes, and you say, no, I'm busy chanting. So obviously, you don't understand what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So I unfortunately have noticed many times devotees miss the point of Krishna consciousness just like that. And Narasimha Maharaj was very, how can you say, very sharp. He did not miss any of these things. So being with him for so long, I heard all of these things. And he wrote what was called Krishna Talk articles. There's close to 300 articles on Gosai-com, Krishna Talk articles, and they were inspired by wrongdoings amongst the Vaishnavas.
Mm.
Particularly, one devotee was preaching higher liga to the unqualified.
Mm-hmm.
And Maharaj thought this was not appropriate, and even distributing the most confidential rasas in a book on the street in Bangalore. So he wrote about this and distortions of history, like that Yoga Pete is the birthplace of Mahaprabhu, and also that, well, the ISKCON Temple of Understanding was the Adbhut Mandir, the temple envisioned by Bhaktivinoda Thakur, when actually that was built by Bhaktisiddhanta at the birthplace of Mahaprabhu, as
Mm.
predicted in scriptures also. So he wrote these articles with incredible, uh, uh, incredibly good references to back up what he's saying. Archaeological, scriptural, quotes from different great saints and souls and line in our parampara, and so on and so on and so on. So it was pretty much irrefutable evidence. And the interesting thing about many of these points of Siddhanta or Avaishnavic behavior that Narasimha Maharaj addressed, the same exact points were brought up in Bhaktisiddhanta's time and written
Mm-hmm.
about by him and his disciples. In the Gaudiya magazine, we had some of them, our devotees, translated from the Bengali, and then we saw that the very same arguments were made against our line because people
Mm.
have their own agenda.
Mm-hmm.
Like in Vrindavan, it's the crossroads of all spirituality. It's founded on Vaishnavism, yes, on Krishna Bhakti, yes, but the impersonalists are there. Even the Sri Vaishnavas have a temple there
Yeah.
in Vrindavan.
Yeah.
We had our ashram was just down the street from their temple, and
Mm.
but why are they in Vrindavan? They're in Vrindavan because it's such a popular spiritual place. You can even use the term used by the Muslims, Mecca. It's the place of
Mm-hmm.
congregation. And why are the impersonalists there, the Shankarites? Well, they give out free prasad to everybody. So many sadhus in India, actually, it's a noble profession to be a sadhu and beg. And
Mm-hmm.
people respect that as long as they're well behaved and so on. So it's a way that many survive in India. Unfortunately, many of them have the wrong philosophy or don't have any philosophy. But yet, if they put on this saffron cloth, the orange
Mm-hmm.
cloth, well, this is more red, this is more orange. And unfortunately, my dhoti
Here,
is more,
here I have here I have more orange, Maharaj, if it helps.
yes. Well, we can't get the right cloth, the gurmati, the cloth and the dye. I went to
Fine, it's fine.
Trivandrum to get the right cloth, and I had to go to Nagarcoil to the original place out in the boondocks to get there's a special dye, and they use caustic soda and other things because when you get this in Vrindavan, the color may be nice and saffron, but after washing it 3 times, it turns out like this.
Um,
Only it's
yeah.
pink, and I don't like the
Mm-hmm.
pink, so I got this, which is a different cloth. Anyway, I'm just saying it's always interesting the things we do.
Yeah.
And as I discovered in my travels with Narasimha Maharaj, Krishna consciousness is never a dull moment.
Mm.
And It's always an adventure. And with Narsingha, everything was an adventure. We were always going on treks into the Himalayas or going on expeditions here and there, opening
Yeah.
temples in far off places and publishing
I
books.
remember, yeah, I remember some of those videos you made with Devotion production, going to Himalayas and some of these very unique
Right.
places.
Himalayan pilgrimage. And
Hmm.
oh yeah, that was that was great. When we went through Pokhara, this is a funny story actually. We had a flight from Kathmandu to Jonsum, then to to Jonsum from
Hmm.
what was the other place? Not Pokhara. Shoot. Yeah, I guess it was Pokhara to Jonsum. And
Okay.
there, while we had to wait for our flight for like 2 hours between flights, so we were walking around and we came upon this snake charmer. He had cobras and pythons around his arm and cobras in a basket and all this. And so we were watching him, and I sat down on the ground. I was watching him. Then the man who was doing it walked over to me and took off the python and then put it around my neck. I saw it
Okay.
coming, and I didn't I don't mind that. I know from long experience that these pythons are used to all these things and they're not
Yeah.
particularly dangerous. And even the cobras, they're usually defanged and they're just treated that way. And the snake charmer just keeps them in a basket, doesn't really worry about it. So
Hmm.
our Maharaj, when he saw when he saw the put the python on my neck, he was like, he says, "Whoa!" And he got his camera and he started recording it. And then he came and he put another cobra on my neck. Then he took he put several pythons on my neck, and then he put a cobra. I had a hat on, put a cobra on my
Oh.
hat, and then another one, I don't know. I had so many snakes around, and Mars was just filming the whole thing. He was like, so that ended up in the Himalayan Pilgrimage movie, which you
Mm.
can find. Many years ago, I had put all these online. A lower resolution copy. It was on
Mm.
DevaVision.org, DevaVision.org, where you can purchase these
Yeah.
videos, and I think, at least I put them on there many years ago. I don't do the websites anymore, although I
Mm.
started most all of them. So anyway, the video was there, and in there was myself with the snakes around my neck. And
Marathi, you have talked about your relationship and friendship with Narasimha Maharaj, and you have had a friendship of almost 40 years, which is not
yes,
common to
yes,
see between, as you say, two men, two sannyasis living together, working together, having such a
yes.
lifelong friendship. So I don't know if you can share a few words about, yeah, your relationship with him, the friendship, like the deep bond that the two of you
Yeah.
had with.
Well,
Yeah.
in the beginning, I was a brahmachari. In ISKCON
Mm,
times, every sannyasi had a assistant,
mm,
and in ISKCON, it was often had to be a godbrother because there weren't any other devotees. So anyway, when I joined with Maharaj, I was his brahmachari assistant. Then he gave me sannyas, and he didn't really want me to be his assistant after that, more of his associate. So anyway,
mhm,
I was with him for all those years, traveling the whole time, and we mostly got along really well. After he gave me sannyas in '86 in Hawaii, he said to me, he said, I'm always going to be tough on you. I'm always going to be strict because that's
mhm.
what is sannyas. You want to be a good sannyasi? That's what I want. So I'm never going to let up on you. I'm never going to let up on you. And I was thinking at the time he said that, I go, well, that's good. That's good, actually, because it'll make me be a better devotee. It'll be really strict. And one of the devotees who used to be in my Sankirtan party in former ISKCON days, he came to join us when we were passing through LA in our motorhome. And he came in the motorhome and he met Maharaj and he met me again. He saw me after so many years, and he was saying, oh, I'd like to join with your party. Then he saw how Maharaj was. He was kind of strict and very uh, pointed and fixed in his service. And then he didn't come back. He didn't want to join because he could see, oh, I'm really going to have to toe the line here. I can't just do what I want to do. Another
Mm-hmm.
devotee once wanted to join us in Vrindavan, and he came in and he went into one of the brahmachari rooms, put his feet up on the air cooler and turned it on and kicked back in the chair and say, "Oh, it's really nice here. Yeah, maybe I'd like to join you guys, become a devotee in your society." And I said, "Well, yeah, we can think about that, but you have to talk to Narsingha Maharaj. He's not here today, but you come back tomorrow or any other day and you can talk to him." Then
Mm-hmm.
I said, "But Maharaj is very strict, very strict." And they never came back.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, I did that on purpose because I could see their motivation was not sincere.
Mm-hmm.
They were not there for Maharaj, for our mission. We have many people come to our ashram here and they're looking for a meal and a bed. They're not looking, they don't even know who we are, what we stand for. If you come here, you had to like Narsingha Maharaj, you had to like Srila Sridhar Maharaj, you had to like Srila Prabhupada, our philosophy, our mission. You have to be compatible with that. So
Yeah.
anyway, well, I don't know where to jump back in, but
Your friendship with Narasimha Maharaj.
huh?
Your
What?
friendship with Narasimha Maharaj, the nature of your bond and your connection. Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, I was his sannyasi disciple and godbrother. And as I said, he was very
Mm-hmm.
strict with me. And after so many years together, sometimes we wore each other a little thin, I mean, it's unheard of. And one time we were in Hawaii and we had a Jeep Wrangler. And I pulled into the gas station or yeah, we pulled into the gas station to get some gas, and I went to a store across the street. As I was coming back, some man looked at Maharaj by the Jeep, and then he saw me across the street, and he said, "Is that your brother over there?" Because I guess
Mm-hmm.
we looked a lot alike. We were both
Mm-hmm.
about the same height. At the time, we were outside of ISKCON, so we had beards. We'd grown beards when we had started an ashram on the Big Island. This is in Oahu where I was saying this, but we had built an ashram on Oahu. We had 40 acres of land there, and it was kind of a jungle, but it was mostly fields and hills. And we built an ashram there with uh, off the grid.
Mm-hmm.
We did get electricity later on, or actually in the front of the property, but we didn't. We had solar power. I put in all the solar power and a water catchment system, and we built A-frames with aluminum siding, and we cut down eucalyptus trees and made our own lumber. And Maharaj and I built these cabins ourselves, the two of us. At one point, we hired a devotee carpenter to help us because we had to build quite a few. When Tripurari Maharaj joined us, he brought his mission which had been separate at that time, from California. And so we were all there. Anyway, it was quite an adventure. And eventually we got rained out after 1 year of solid rain. In
Mm-hmm.
Hawaii, they are
Wow.
volcanoes. And
Mm-hmm.
the island is the tip of the volcano coming out of the ocean. And they have a wet side and a dry side. Like we were on the Hilo side, the wet side, and the other side is a Kona side. It's hot, no rain at all. And that's
Mm-hmm.
where all the tourist places are. They
Mm-hmm.
build these huge hotels. They bring in entire palm trees and install them in the ground and bring in, the grass and put it all around and they water everything. And that
Mm-hmm.
way they make paradise out of it. It's not natural, but it works. So the people like to come there and they lay about in the sun and then they go in the ocean and it's hotter than blazes, so they like it. So we had our ashram on the other side. It turned out that rainy is an understatement in Hilo. Actually, Keao, another island, or maybe it's Lanai, I forget now, but I visited there. I think it's Keao. It's the hottest it's the not the hottest. That's Govardhan is the hottest inhabited place in the world. That's the Guinness Book of Records. But this has
Yeah.
the highest rainfall of the world, Keao.
Hmm.
Maybe it's I, that's the problem. I don't remember all the names. But we visited the Hinduism Today ashram there once when we were publishing a Clearing Call magazine many years ago, and it rained a lot there. So anyway, the Hilo side is known for its rain, and we got rained out. We had to eventually leave that ashram because the devotees were mostly city people, and they just couldn't survive there. I was used to it. I didn't mind it. I can live in
Hmm.
the rain. I didn't like it, but anyway, Maharaj decided, and Tripurari Maharaj told me, he said, I've never experienced anything like this in my life. You know, he said,
Hmm.
this rain every day is just too much. So he was happy to leave also. So we brought
Hmm.
everything, we packed up the ashram and moved to Hilo. And I brought the deities, Gaurada Madhava and Gaurada Madhava. I brought them to Vrindavan, to our Rupanuga Bhajan ashram, which we had opened a couple of years before that. And then all the devotees joined a little while later. And eventually, we acquired this property here near Mysore,
Hmm.
and established the ashram here. And then we brought all the deities and devotees down here. Maharaj decided to bring us all together because we aren't a lot of devotees, and a sangha is so important. So we combined everyone and all our assets together in one place and closed the temple in Vrindavan eventually.
Hmm.
I think it's a good plan because I was always sick in Vrindavan, and it was very difficult to manage being a foreigner. And at the time, we didn't have as many local devotees, and you need that to deal with the municipality and other things in the area. North India is a much rougher area than South India.
Hmm.
South Indians are more Brahminical. They're cleaner, more into their puja. Not to say they aren't in North India, they are, but they're a lot rougher in qualities. And so I really appreciate South India. It's much more compatible, and also the weather. And I noticed in my travels between North and South India that every time I went to North India in the cold season, I would get sick. And as soon as I came back down to Mysore, I get healthy again. So there's a difference in the climate. Nowadays, I don't get sick so much like that. Um, Declining health and old age and all, but I've taken certain measures to bring my health back up. It was declining greatly, but
Hmm.
anyway, there's things you can do. I just mentioned briefly. Basically, it comes down to lifestyle and what you eat,
Hmm.
and that can totally turn your health around. And
Hmm.
believe it or not, any disease is curable by these two actions of establishing a better lifestyle. That means getting exercise, enough sleep, association, managing your stress, all that. So if you do that and you eat healthy, and as devotees, we're taking prasadam. We cook all our own food, so we don't eat processed food, and it's all vegetarian. So naturally, we're already quite a bit healthier.
Hmm.
So it's not a big jump to eat totally healthy. So anyway, you can basically. I turned my health around. I was very much deteriorating, and I brought it back around just by those factors. So I wanted to
Hmm.
mention that. So
Thank you.
part of
Ma- yeah,
important
sorry.
part of yes, important part of Krishna consciousness is, as I said, um, our attitude of sincerity and dedication and simplicity. And I could add to that um, optimism
Mm.
and gratitude.
Mm.
If we are optimistic and have gratitude for our good fortune, these may be mundane principles, but they translate in devotional life to a higher quality of life.
Mhm.
Because, for example, there's the Vastu Shastra, which describes very carefully how to arrange your home. And if you look behind me here, you see there's orange there and there's kind of a light tan over here. That was
Mhm.
one of my endeavors to try to adhere to the Vastu Shastra. And you see
Mhm.
there's a snake plant behind me.
Hmm.
That's just for ambience. But um, these things are mundane. And I remember when we were arranging the ashram, Narsingha Maharaj kind of like poo-pooed those things and just said, well, look, just build it simple and make it clean and
Mhm.
neat. And that's one of the glories of this ashram is it is very simple construction, but it's very sattvic, it's very clean and neat, and it's a beautiful garden. And people
Yeah.
come here and are amazed by the atmosphere. What is it?
Mm.
It affects non-devotees. They come here and they go, "Oh, this place is very sattvic. It is such a high energy. What is that?" Well, it's all the things I just mentioned, and it's
Mm.
the deities here that are worshipped, but mostly it's the worship and devotion of the devotees here. So the
Mhm.
ambience pervades this place. It's a spiritual realm. Srila Prabhupada, in one lecture, he's in New York City. And two different lectures at two different times, maybe years apart, he describes we are here in this remote place, New York City, far, far from Sridham Mayapur, in this remote place. He's calling New York remote because it's
Mhm.
away from Dham. And another time, he's saying, we are here in Vaikunta, and he's in New York Temple, the 26th,
Mhm.
26th, I can have it, the one on was it 7th Avenue or whatever it was. They had a temple there for many years. It was Prabhupada's pride and joy. It was this big, luxurious uh, temple uh,
Mm.
on one of the main streets in Manhattan. And later, after Prabhupada left, his disciples sold it and bought a bunch of small temples, which never really amounted to so much. And that was Prabhupada's pride and joy. But anyway, one time in a talk there, he says that we are here in Vaikunta, in the spiritual world. Now,
Mhm.
why would he say that? Because by his presence, by the presence of the devotees and the worship, it is the spiritual realm. What did Mahaprabhu say? Moraman
Great.
Vrindavan. My mind is Vrindavan. One time
Mm.
on a morning walk with the devotees in the United States, one devotee commented, "Oh, Srila Prabhupada, this place, this is just like California." And
Mhm.
Prabhupada said, "Yes, wherever you go, it will be California." Then the devotee realized his mistakes. He said, "Oh, but Prabhupada, wherever you are, it is Vrindavan." And Prabhupada
Mm.
just kind of, yes, he shook his head the way he does. I can't even do it properly, but he said, "Yes, wherever I am, it is Vrindavan." Same as
Mm.
Mahaprabhu said, "Moraman Vrindavan." And
Srila Maharaj will say, right? Vrindavan is a state of consciousness.
it is. That's exactly it. And
Mhm.
then that devotee said, "Oh yes, Prabhupada. Yes, yes, that is right."
Mm.
So it is a state of consciousness. And that's one thing as having been a devotee for more than 50 years, I realize so much is in your mind and
Mm.
your consciousness makes where you are. I know in
Mhm.
psychology, they'll still study this and say or you can see it directly. Like sometimes when I was giving class, I can see that someone's eyes kind of go glaze over and go back in their head. You know, oh, they're not listening. They're not there.
Mm.
They are
Mm.
somewhere else, thinking somewhere else. And vicariously, in full dimension, like a flat screen TV, they're
Mm.
seeing something else. Their mind is
Mm.
somewhere else. Or we may be chanting japa, and all of a sudden a flash comes from our past, and we go, oh no, I don't want to think about that. It's some nonsense, right? And we might go, ah. Sometimes the devotees are chanting Hare Krishna, and then they'll say Hare Krishna very loudly, and they're
Mm.
trying to block out those thoughts. There's actually a term mentioned in the Prabhupada's Nectar of Devotion, which comes from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And this is one of the rasas of disgust,
Yeah.
where the devotee rejects his own mind's thoughts of negativity toward Krishna consciousness. And I don't want to think about that. Hare Krishna, go away. So this is a devotional act to reject your own mind's going to Maya.
Mm.
And it's a helpful thing to maintain your Krishna consciousness. Gita says, from whatever and wherever the mind wanders, due to its flickering and unsteady nature, we must draw it back to the self, to
Mhm.
Krishna consciousness. Wherever it goes, you drag it back. So the mind is always going to wander. But what is the secret? By chanting Hare Krishna, we're engaging it. We stay focused in Krishna consciousness. Krishna Surya Sama Maya Haya Andakar. This was Prabhupada's motto on the heading of Back to Godhead magazine. Wherever
Mhm.
there is Maya, there is no God. And wherever there is Krishna, then, wherever there, how does that go? The opposite is there.
Yeah,
When
Krishna
it's
the
like the
sun,
darkness of the light,
light.
huh? So a thief comes at night because they can hide in the darkness. And if
Mm.
you shine a spotlight, suddenly they're like, and they want to run away because they're exposed with the
Mhm.
light. So I equate this analogy to when Srila Sridhar Maharaj spoke to many of my godbrothers who were having trouble in ISKCON at the time. They went to him and he gave them clear guidance. And it's like a spotlight on the defects that were going on within that society. So the leaders didn't like it because they're exposed, like the
Mm.
thief. They were mistreating the devotees. They were mistreating their own disciples, not
Mm.
giving proper, uh, just not acting properly. I can leave it at that. There are many things. I don't want to get into details, but and they didn't
Mm.
like it. They were exposed. So they
Mm.
committed many offenses. And this was the unfortunate part of writing Our Affectionate Guardians. It
This one,
started
yes.
out, yes,
Yeah.
to
Yeah, I remember
document.
how this book started, which was very intense. The first time I read it, starts in the introduction saying,
Yes,
"This
well,
book
it is
should have
intense.
never been written. This book should have never been written," and then
Yeah,
concludes saying, "Read and cry."
yeah. That's actually Tripura Maharaj wrote that preface or
Mm.
introduction. The
Mm.
funny thing was, he told me because I wrote the majority of it. I was staying in his ashram in Eugene, Oregon,
Mhm.
and he told me, "Don't be heavy. Don't criticize our godbrothers. Just be gentle, so we can distribute this." And then
Mhm.
he wrote that forward, which was really heavy. And I thought, what the heck? Here I was being gentle with him, and then they read and cry. And but that is
Maharaj, yeah, in this connection, in relation to the book, which of course speaks about also the loving relationship between Srila Prabhupada and Srila Sridhar Maharaj. I'm thinking if you could share a few words from your own experience about
well,
what was that relationship, because sometimes the both still are not aware how close Srila Sridhar Maharaj was to Srila Prabhupada's heart, how such a
you
loving
there,
friendship they have between the two.
yes, there's just too many points. Many of them, most of them are put in that book in the first
Yeah.
chapter, and I can't mention them all in this short
No.
time. We've already spoken a
Yeah.
long time. I'm not going to speak too
Yeah.
much longer. It's already an hour and 20 minutes. So when somehow I got the urge to write this book, and I spoke with Narasimha Maharaj about it, and he said, "Oh, you don't really need to write that book." And then I just realized that I had to write this book. It was an internal thing. It just came out. I felt so much drive to write the book, and Maharaj wasn't encouraging at first. Then after I finished the book, and he read it, and he thought, "Oh, this is great. This describes who we are. This explains our background, our relationship, uh, because we are disciples and followers of Srila Prabhupada and Sridhar Maharaj." So the fact that they had such a close, intimate relationship, they lived together in Calcutta
Yeah.
just around the time that the Gaudiya Mutt was breaking up after Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's disappearance. Prabhupada had rented two houses side by side on Sitakanta Banerjee Lane in Calcutta, and he rented the right-hand house to Srila Sridhar Maharaj. Prabhupada stayed in the left one, and he was running his chemical business from there. And he rented at a negligible rate the house on the right for Srila Sridhar Maharaj, who stayed there for several years. And so they took prasadam together, they preached together, they communed and discussed so many philosophical points. And even when the Gaudiya Mutt broke up, they discussed all of that. So some of the comments of my godbrothers that Prabhupada, that Sridhar Maharaj did so many wrong things and Prabhupada didn't know that, and so on. And so it's not true. They were intimately connected at that time. So there's a lot of history that's not known. Their intimate relationships. They used to preach together in Mumbai. In fact, Srila Sridhar Maharaj in one of his talks said how Srila Prabhupada would canvass and bring people, and Sridhar Maharaj would give the class, and Goswami Maharaj, another godbrother who was one of the founders of the Imli Tal Gaudiya Mutt in Vrindavan, he would collect. So the three of them had a program. They worked together. Like Maharaj and Narasimha Maharaj and I worked together. You know, we had many programs. We all had our services. And like every mission, every small group, even, they have our departments. We work together. Prabhupada organized ISKCON on a grand scale. He had the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust. He had the Bhaktivedanta Institute for his scientific preaching, which I almost joined, actually. Actually, I had a choice because I was in San Diego, a senior, only brahmachari Prabhupada disciple there, and I didn't want to get married. And there were a lot of ladies who were single, and I could feel their gaze burning the back of my head. And Buddy Ryan, the temple president, called me into his office and said, "You know, Prabhu, we have a lot of nice Madhajis here." And I said, "Oh, that's very nice, as long as you don't ask me to marry one of them." And then he looked at me kind of funny and said, "Oh, okay." And then I said, I really need some older association because I'm the oldest brahmachari here. All the other Prabhupada disciples are all grihastas, and I need some sannyasi and brahmachari association. So I want to go somewhere. Anyway, my friend Mahatma, godbrother, was a senior sannyas coordinator. He had some title, but he was the coordinator for all number of temples under Ramaswamy Maharaj. And he said, "Well, you could go and preach with Srop Damodar Maharaj. He has a BI up in San Francisco." So we went up there, And I
Mhm.
found it wasn't really the atmosphere I was looking for. And then he said to me, well, you could go to Chicago. That's where all the senior book distributors are. And I said, that's where I want to go. So I
Mm.
went to Chicago, and that's how I came to be in association with Tripurari Maharaj and eventually Narasimha Maharaj. So um, I get lost in all the stories
No problem.
because
Yeah, we were talking about Srila Prabhupada and Srila Siddhar Maharaj, and then you talked about your
oh yeah,
joining the Bhakti.
let's go back to there in Calcutta, and they associated together. And then when the Gaudiya Mutt broke up,
Mm-hmm.
they at the time they were looking for the acharya of the mission,
Mm.
and Ananta Vasudev
Mm.
was the senior most he was the most learned Vaishnava, disciple of Prabhupada, Prabhupada
Mm-hmm.
Bhaktisiddhanta. So when they asked the devotees, first they asked Sridhar Maharaj to be guru,
Mm.
and he said, "No, no, I don't want to be I cannot take Guru Maharaj's place." And so they weren't sure what to do. Then other devotees started to initiate, but before that, they asked Sridhar Maharaj, well, who would you recommend? And he said, I recommend Ananta Vasudeva because he's the most
Mm-hmm.
learned and it goes with
Mm.
the scripture. So he
Mm.
was installed by the Gaudiya Mutt to be, and this was like a GBC meeting of senior devotees, and he was made the guru, the charya. And after some time, as related by Srila Sridhar Maharaj, he says, after some time, Ananta Vasudeva fell down. He did
Mm.
some crazy things. And so he not was not possible for him to be the mission acharya. But he controlled some of the temples, um, and particular, he was controlling the Bhagwazar Mutt in Calcutta, and Tirtha Maharaj was controlling the Mayapur temple, the Yogapeeth temple, the birthplace of
Mm.
Mahaprabhu. So they couldn't decide. And eventually, Srila Sridhar Maharaj decided, they asked him to come. He left all the Gaudiya Mutt, went and lived in the jungle alone, went away from all his godbrothers, and it took him quite a while to find him. But still, they asked him to come back. They said, you're the only one who can convince Ananta Vasudeva to be reasonable and arrange a compromise. And eventually, Srila Sridhar Maharaj did arrange a compromise between Ananta Vasudeva and Tirtha Maharaj. And what they did is they agreed that Ananta Vasudeva could keep the Bhagbazar Mutt, which was a very elegant temple with marble and everything, and
Mm-hmm.
Tirtha Maharaj would keep Mayapur, because
Mm-hmm.
Mayapur, there's only one place, the birthplace of Mahaprabhu. So Ananta Vasudeva wanted Mayapur, but he couldn't have that also. So they both agreed at the time. So there are many other things, many problems, and the fighting and the court cases and all, it just went on for years because just the nature, it's a human nature. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when Sridhar Maharaj went into the jungle and basically left their total association, as Prabhupada also left the Gaudiya Mutt. And they both went on preaching
Mm-hmm.
as asked and requested by their guru. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj also left his guru's mission, and Narasimha Maharaj and I left our guru's mission because it was too hard to maintain in that society. I was with Narasimha Maharaj when we were in ISKCON, and he was going to the temple president's meeting, trying to, what do they call it? Get them to do the right thing. They had a particular word. It begins with R. Reform committees. They had reform committees, and the temple presidents would make a recommendation for the GBC meetings. They had a number of recommendations. Then the GBC didn't pass any of them, and then their temple presidents were upset with them. So this went on for years, and finally, when we left, it was just we had to leave, and also we left because a big part of that reason, probably the predominant reason, was for the Shiksha of Srila Sridhar Maharaj,
Mhm.
because that was not really allowed within ISKCON at that time at all. So that was a great boon. And I found myself, when I left ISKCON, I didn't feel like I left anything. I felt like I graduated. Like we leave high school, we go to college, we graduate college, we get a job, and we go on
Mhm.
with life. It was like that for me. And I never left Prabhupada, and Maharaj never left Prabhupada. We went on serving Srila Prabhupada and taking his Shiksha and also the Shiksha of Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And I feel we are chaste to both of them.
Mhm.
And there's no problem there. So I joined with Maharaj in San Francisco, and we did all of these things, and the mission went on. And the first time I met Srila Sridhar Maharaj was in 1987 when we went in Gaur Purnima. I had joined with Narsingha Maharaj and Tripurari Maharaj and Sadhu Maharaj and Kanangiri Maharaj, all godbrothers of mine. So we were
Mhm.
5 sannyasis in this mission that was basically Tripurari Maharaj's mission originally, and then we all joined with him. And then Narsingha Maharaj went to Hawaii because being a senior Vaishnava, he needed his own space. So he went to Hawaii, and I decided to join him there because I felt more comfortable with him than with Tripurari Maharaj. So I joined with Narsingha Maharaj in Hawaii and pretty much stayed with him. Then later we joined back with Tripurari Maharaj to open the Rupanuka Bhajan Ashram in Vrindavan, and gradually grew apart again with Tripurari Maharaj's portion of that mission. So we just established that. uh, so it's so many different aspects of Krishna consciousness we have gone through, so many evolutions and convolutions and overcoming difficulties. And this is life going forward with enthusiasm. And as any good businessman will tell you, you deal with many setbacks and mistakes, even bankruptcies, are stepping stones to success. When you
Mhm.
learn by your mistakes and don't make those mistakes again,
Mhm.
and most successful businessmen will tell you about their failures. Look at, like, for example, Elon Musk and his rockets. He had like three failures,
Mhm.
and SpaceX was on the brink of bankruptcy, and he put all of his money in, and the next launch was successful. And I can say even the government of the United States, because they're making so much progress, there's extreme polarization. I remember
Mhm.
one of my godbrothers, actually, I guess it was your former guru, told me how in Poland they were preaching so successfully that a Christian nun filed a lawsuit against them and brought them to
Mhm.
court saying that
Mhm.
this is demoniac because Krishna has many wives or whatever. He's a Davachi. And the devotee who defended that in court said, "Well, you're a nun. I see you have a wedding ring on your finger. And what does this signify? It is her marriage to God.
Mhm.
So all the nuns are married to God. So it's the same kind of thing as Krishna."
Mhm.
And the interesting thing about Krishna is that when there was a Brahma Vimohan Leela and Krishna expanded himself as all the cowherd boys to replace the ones that Brahma had stolen, he just put them all back, but they were all expansions of him. And
Mhm.
during this time, all the men in Vrindavan, the Gopas, married all the gopis. But
Mhm.
Krishna, his expansion was
Mhm.
all the Gopas. So basically, all the gopis married Krishna. So he's not about you. He's actually married to all of them. This is the intricacies of Krishna Lila. There's so many things, and it's just endlessly amazing that Krishna has so many rasas, that he's Rasa Raja. Raja means king. So there's been kings in India back in those days, and he is the king of Ras, is Krishna, because he enjoys all these leelas. Even he sent Lord Shiva, one of the senior most demigod, to take birth as Sankaracharya and establish the impersonalist conception, Advaita Vedanta, because this is a detraction from our Vaishnava beliefs. Because this helps to establish the position of the Vedas. And in this regard, I recommend reading Evolution of Theism, which is Narasimha Maharaj's book, which I first helped lay out and design, and actually laid it out and published it on behalf of Maharaj, because it discusses the evolution through these great acharyas. Buddha, who is described as a theist, because he does not admit to being God. He does not represent in the same manner as avatars of God do, but he's expansion of God. And the South Indians don't like that. So the Das avatars in some temples in India, South India particularly, they don't put Buddha as a Das avatar. They have Haigriva or some other form of the Lord. So Buddha, Madhvacharya,
Shankara after
Buddha, Sankaracharya is first, then Ramanuja, and then Madhvacharya, and then Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And through these are different aspects leading up to Vaishnavism. And our particular area is Gaudiya Vaishnavism. Gauda means Bengal area, coming down, and in that line, there are Gaur Saraswat Brahmins here in South India, particularly over in the Udupi side. And right near where our other ashram is in Mulki, we used to go for shopping, for buying supplies in one village, which was between there and another ashram we had in the jungle. It was Varahavan, the forest of Varahadev, because he appeared there in the Kudrimukh. So we used to buy groceries from the Gaur Saraswat Brahmins there, who Rupa and Sanatan were Gaur Saraswat Brahmins who came from Bengal down to this area. So they were forerunners of this Gaur Saraswat Brahmin community, which is very prominent. And one of the richest temples in all of India is the Shingadev temple in Mulki. And we've been there many times. They have their festival once a year. They offer 10,000 coconuts to the Lord. They have a gold Rath that they bring the deity on. They have gold and silver Rath, but this one is actually gold. And they bring the deity procession around the temple. This is common in South India. There's so much opulence. I heard in Sri Rangam that there was a buried treasure below the temple that they recently discovered, where there's just unlimited wealth. So much gold and jewels. It was all property of the deities, because actually everything belongs to God. And I think I've talked long enough. I will leave something for later, but I just want to give one short story about that. What is it now? If I can remember the story, I don't know if I can. How I'll tell a different story. In Prabhupada's time, the devotees would ask, well, Srila Prabhupada, everything belongs to Krishna. So can we steal Krishna because it belongs to him anyway. Can we steal and bring it to the deities? And Prabhupada said, well, technically, yes, but if you're caught, then you have to pay the price. And so in LA, when I was there, I noticed many devotees would steal flowers from the neighbors to offer to the deities. And I, I thought this was terrible because sooner or later the neighbors all noticed this. And it just gave us a bad reputation, makes us bad neighbors. We're stealing their flowers. Why do you grow flowers? You don't grow it so somebody can take them to their home. You don't do that. So anyway, that was going on. And another story like that is what was that? Darn. Anyway, where you can offer things to Krishna and Prabhupada said, yes, but don't get caught. And sometimes devotees would do that anyway, thinking they were doing a service for Prabhupada and for Krishna. But when they got caught, it was simply a crime in the ordinary life. So maybe they had to pay for that with, the penalties of committing an illegal act. So even in the eyes of God, it may recognize that this is acceptable. In the eyes of the laws of the land where we are living, it's not acceptable.
Yeah. To wrap up, Maharaj, just any you would like to leave our listeners with one key reflection or something you would like to share, some closing words, so we put our sharing to rest. What will be that
Well,
thing?
I will use the words of Srila Sridhar Maharaj. He said that he said, we thank our lucky stars. Now that's a mundane expression, but it means we are gracious. We have a lot of gratitude that we have had the opportunity to associate with so many great souls are in our parampara. I was so fortunate to be able to be initiated by Srila Prabhupada. Then I was so fortunate to meet Narsingha Maharaj because through him, I was able to penetrate much more deeply into Srila Prabhupada's instructions and understanding his nature because Narsingha Maharaj traveled with Prabhupada. He served him. He set up his rooms in the Radha Damodar temple and so many other things. He served him in Kumbh Mela. And when I went with Narsingha Maharaj to Kumbh Mela in '89 and also 2013, I think it was, I just he explained everything through Srila Prabhupada's understanding and interpretation, so I could understand that. Then with Narsingha Maharaj, I met Srila Sridhar Maharaj and was so overwhelmed by Srila Sridhar Maharaj's dynamic presentation. He started to talk to us when we 5 sannyasis went there as a group. Our new temple had newly opened and we'd installed our Gaurada Madhava deities, and we had just brought back the Mahaprabhu deity from Navadvip when we went there and met with Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And when I met him, I just felt like a puddle of water on the floor. I melted because it was explanation. He was explaining and he took us to the spiritual realm and just like it was like a rocket ship taking us to Goloka as his conception higher and higher and higher. Then one devotee asked a stupid question and it stopped, but he was going so nicely and so high. I was so impressed by that. I said to Narsingha Maharaj afterwards, I said, boy, I'd really like to have some kind of connection with Srila Sridhar Maharaj. And he said, well, I don't know. That's a little difficult. You've already got all your names and you got your connection with Prabhupada. And Maharaj had already given me sannyas. And So he left it at that. But then the next year, 87, because he realized that Srila Sridhar Maharaj was not long for the world, because when we'd been there, he hardly met us. We were the only ones that went to see him when we went there. So he went the next year and actually didn't get a chance to meet him personally.
Mm-hmm.
He spent the whole time talking with Sudhir Maharaj, who had published all of Srila Sridhar Maharaj's books. And but he did ask Govinda Maharaj, do you think that Srila Sridhar Maharaj can give a name, a sannyas name, to Bhavananda Roy Swami? That was my brahmachari name. And when he gave me sannyas, he just added the Swami. But when I was introduced to Srila Sridhar Maharaj as Bhavananda Roy Swami, he said, Bhavananda Roy Swami. And the hesitation was there. Neatly, Narasimha Maharaj picked up, oh, something's wrong there. And it is that Bhavananda Roy is a grihasta. So it's not a proper name for sannyasi. Narasimha Maharaj noticed that. So when he went back the next year, he asked I get a proper name because he had given me the name. It wasn't, well, because many sannyasis, when they take sannyas, they're given a totally different name. Like your name is different, right? I don't know actually.
Yes.
But so he asked Govinda Maharaj to speak to Sridhar Maharaj. And then when Govinda Maharaj came back to Narasimha Maharaj, he said, Bhakti Gaurava Narasimha Maharaj. And then Narasimha Maharaj said, oh, that's a wonderful name. Bhavananda Roy will love that name. Bhavananda Roy Swami will love that name. And then Govinda Maharaj said, no, that's your name, Maharaj. That's not his. And he thought, gulp, I didn't ask for a name. So that's just the irony of it. And Narasimha Maharaj earlier had preached to me that when you approach a higher Vaishnava, you have to accept whatever they give you. And he told me I wanted to go visit Sridhar Maharaj again. He said, well, you can't just walk up to his room, you got to be invited. So I went one day and asked his servant if I could meet with Sridhar Maharaj. And he allowed me to go up there, but it was kind of against the instructions of Narasimha Maharaj. But they allowed me to go there, and I met Srila Sridhar Maharaj, and I was introduced as Bhavananda Roy Swami, and he said, yes, Bhavananda Roy Swami, disciple of Narasimha Maharaj. But I wasn't actually his disciple. I'm a Prabhupada disciple, but a sannyasi disciple. So I realized at that point that was a big distinction for Sridhar Maharaj. And that was my retribution for going up there, that he would call me like that. And it ended up, he didn't talk very long. He didn't speak to me really. He just, I was introduced, and it was obvious he wasn't speaking to anyone at that time. So I just paid my respects and left. Then Narasimha Maharaj afterwards says, see, you approached him like that and you got his mercy in this other way. So anyway, then the name comes to him, Bhakti Gaurava Narasimha Maharaj, and I was Bhakti Bhavan Vishnu
Maharaj.
Bhavan, yes. Bhakti Bhavan Vishnu Maharaj. And it was Bhavananda Roy, Bhava. So it's the same thing. And he was Jagat Guru Swami. And as I understand, the Nrsingadev is like the guru and principal. So anyway, that way, Srila Sridhar Maharaj was keeping the same form, the substance of the name, but not the form. And Maharaj accepted it because it was coming from the higher Vaishnava, and you can't refuse the mercy from the higher Vaishnava.